Peace and blessings, YouTube. The Ripper here. It's always an honor and pleasure to come before you in truth and righteousness and humility. Tonight, I want to talk about the mental health crisis that we all may be aware of, not just in America, but abroad, internationally, all over the planet. But I really want to dive deep. I want to talk about the cause of mental health and then some reasonable solutions. First, what is mental health? By definition, mental health can be described as emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It can also determine how one handles stress, interpersonal relationships, and decision-making. So in this world that we live in, life is simple. The essential things that we need to live is food, water, and shelter, which seems very simple, but then when you look at this society, it's so much more included on those basic principles. And if we're truly going or moving in the right direction, why are people so mentally unhealthy? If we think we're on the right path, if we think that we are doing the right thing, and the way we think and act and behave and the moves that we make, the decisions that we make, what is mental health? Why are we slipping slowly into darkness? Why are we stressed out? Why are we full of deprivation and anxiety and grief and misery? What are we doing wrong? And from my observations, it appears first injustice causes insanity amongst the people, number one. But when you look at nature, the human being needs freedom, justice, and equality. That is a human right. That is the nature of things. A man and woman has to be free to make their own decisions, to determine their own fate, to determine their own success, elevation. The way this system is structured, it is designed to create mental illness. There's no discussing mental health in a system like this because the very root of it causes mental destruction, because it's rooted in slavery, it's rooted in injustice, racism, and wickedness. So a system like this, it's almost a no-brainer that you're mentally unhealthy unless you're one of the overcomers or the righteous and you're mastering your environment in this atmosphere. But most people have unfortunately allowed this system to break them and allowed them to lose their humanity. When you lose your humanity, that is another serious cause of mental health. When you no longer can relate to human beings, when you can only relate to things or animals, and you can't relate to human beings, and that's the way God created us all, is to relate to one another. Then you lose your mental powers, or your mental stability, or your mental foundation or balance, because you relate more to things that are not rooted or that are not made for elevation, for us to elevate as human beings. So it just, to me, in my humble judgment, it appears that we have given power to things that totally makes no sense. You know, things that we focus on and the trifling things that we focus on is the reason why we are seriously in mental health. You would think human beings would be intelligent enough to understand basic principles. It's like we're like little children. It's like we're supposed to be full-grown adults, and we still argue about what color we are, what race we are, how much money we do or do not have, materialistic things. I mean, when you think about that, that is very childish, very, very immature and underdeveloped. That means you are an underdeveloped human being, because for you to focus on created things first that you didn't create, that really comes from a source that you didn't create, and to boast in that, you know, instead of connecting to righteous laws and principles that the Creator put in all human beings to connect to, instead of discovering that and cultivating that, we want to focus on external things that can do us benefit nor harm. Materialistic things can do you benefit nor harm. When you're dead and gone, you can't take it with you. Can't take your money with you. So what is the point of being vain and having money or having materialism? What is the point of that? Because when you look at that, that is a serious cause of mental health. And most people will compromise and deviate to make money, or unless they stand on principles and righteous principles and ethics, then oftentimes they have to compromise truth or compromise themselves to gain in this world. That's what this world was set up for. And we've talked about that in previous videos, how this world was really set up like a scientific experiment to see who would bow down to wickedness and money. After knowing truth, after knowing the righteous law, you would still bow down to wickedness for some superficial gain. That is what we're witnessing right now, and that is a serious cause of mental health. So many people have chosen that. They say, okay, we all have to die from something. So I would rather be miserable with money than miserable and broke. But broke is not, that is not a physical state. That is a psychological state. Because if you can be a billionaire and be a slave, and we've seen that. So, and you got someone else that can just pull strings and manipulate you and control you, you're not free. So that's not, poverty is a state of mind. That is a psychological way of thinking. Of course, we need money as it's a tool. We need it to move throughout life and do certain things, but it can also enslave you. Money can also enslave you. Materialistic things can also enslave you. That is an unnatural way to live. It's a stressful way to live. You're not supposed to be solely focused on materialistic things and money. That is not what God has us here for. We are not supposed to be so overly concerned with money and things. That is not the purpose of this life. And if you're not using those things to better the lives of others, then you're really losing, because you're failing the test, you see. And that is where this mental health is going, and that is the source of it. Some reasonable solutions, in my humble judgment, would be sacrifice. A sacrifice comes in different ways. When you're willing to sacrifice pleasure, when you're willing to sacrifice vanity, arrogance, ego, then you don't focus on certain things, because those spiritual illnesses or diseases of arrogance, ego, and conceit, and all of the overly concerned with yourself, that is what drives you toward mental health. That is what, or mental illness. That is what drives you toward misery and depression, because you go through life easier when you're humble. When you're vain and arrogant, God can't use you. You're an impure vessel. God cannot use an arrogant person. God cannot use someone who's so overly concerned with themselves, because you won't hear God's voice in you, because you're too busy focused on what you want to do, your desires. And your desires may not be in harmony with truth and righteousness. They may be, but the law that determines that is your obedience to God, not out of your own law. You can't be a law unto yourself, because you didn't create yourself. So this is something that just has to be, we have to mature toward. This is something we have to just grow toward, because we're very immature and underdeveloped. And that's what this world was made for. Many people don't even understand the spiritual aspects of America. We look at the economic, political, social aspect. We don't look at the spiritual aspect. The spiritual aspect of America was to degrade human beings. It was to lower all human beings to a level of a beast or animal. That's what the purpose of America was for. It's a prophetic nation, and in the scriptures it's considered the mystery Babylon. It has several different names in scripture, but when you read scripture, especially in the New Testament, it talks a lot about America, and it talks a lot about the characteristics of America and the way the people think, the way the people behave and act. And when you study that, it'll bring everything home, and you will understand that we have to be more humble, and that we will ultimately be removed if we don't submit to truth and righteousness and justice. It doesn't matter what you want to be. It doesn't matter what you want to do in life. And God does not care about that. All God cares about is not individuals. God cares about people, whole people. What are you doing to better the lives of others? The people. What are you doing to educate others? What are you doing to resurrect the dead? What are you doing, not in the graveyard, but the spiritually, mentally, economically, socially dead? What are you doing to teach those people to come up into consciousness and awareness? That is what God is interested in. And those individuals who make sacrifices to speak truth to power, or to speak truth to those who may not understand. That's what this world is really about. It is about making sacrifices. That's what this life is all about. Overcoming trials, tribulations. When you accept that as your reality, you go through life easier. When you accept pain, accept sacrifices, sacrifices of sex, overeating, or appetites of the flesh, pleasure. That's when you can sacrifice those things, then that is reasonable, and now you can grow and evolve. God will evolve you. But if you're constantly looking for pleasure and no pain or no, because with pain comes growth. Whether you're working out, whether it's spiritual, whether it's mental, pain and uncomfortability is what causes you to overcome. Or it puts you in a situation where you have to overcome, and then that's when growth takes place. So we have to look at this and perceive this a lot different. Our perception is diluted because we're corrupt and materialistic. We need to redirect our priorities and change the way we think if we're going to make it in the 21st century, because most of us on the route that we're on and the path and the direction that we're going is very self-destructive. And we can save ourselves if we just humble ourselves and submit to truth and not play games with truth and try to have these political correct dialogues, lying and this tricknology. Let's talk straight words and speak truth and be open and honest and candid. And then we can heal our land and heal the people. So thank you again, YouTube. It's always an honor and a pleasure. Let's continue to have these dialogues. Comment, please, below so we can continue to have these intelligent dialogues to help one another evolve, grow, and unite. Peace and blessings.